Hello, today I'm joined by my guest Lee Hussle from Weber's Estate Agents. Lee, how are you doing?
Yeah, morning, David. Yeah, very good, thank you. All yeah, very good. Lots going on, so busy.
I'm sure. We just spoke off camera a tiny bit. One of the major topics that we always seem to cover when we get together as estate agents is the issue of conveyancing, and more particularly how it sort of affects our pipeline, our cash flow, and our ability to deliver a service to a customer. Because at the end of the day, probably the easier part of our job is finding a buyer for a property. The harder part of our job is getting that through all the way to completion, and a number of different methods that agents use to, some call it chasing, some call it progressing. I prefer to believe that progressing is more accurately than just chasing, although often it feels like chasing. But you guys handle it in a dedicated fashion and have been working together with Complete ASAP. So today we're here to sort of take your experiences with Complete ASAP. And I think what might be helpful, Lee, is if you could describe the way that you were handling things perhaps before you came to consider an outsourced service, and then tell us how that decision expanded.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, look, you're absolutely right. It is a major source of our constant debate, really, as to where we can get these deals through more quickly. And it was definitely evident start of the year that pipelines have become very stagnated. So we wanted to do something that was going to help to sort of push those deals through a lot quicker. More importantly, as well, though, ensure that our communication was properly tight as well, because I think there's an awful lot of stress involved with this part of the transaction. The seller's got the buyer on board, the buyer's found the property they want, they both want it done. And then there's this horrible process in the middle that we've got to
Yeah.
sort of get through and sort of manage, to everyone's satisfaction. And there's different levels of expectation there, as we know. So, prior to coming on board with Complete ASAP, we had some offices, the bigger offices had sort of dedicated sales chasers, and the smaller ones would have just had people picking it up, as and when. There were always systems in place, but I wouldn't quite say they were ad hoc, but they probably weren't as consistent as we would like them to be. And I think the main thing with that is making sure that we were communicating with all of the relevant parties on a consistent basis as well. So our seller, our buyer, and then the two respective solicitors acting for both parties. So I think one of the real benefits that we've seen with using Complete ASAP and going on board with them is that they do have that consistency right from the get-go. And when we're introduced to the sales progressor that's looking after that case, they do actually get in touch with the buyer straight away and explain the process, which I think is a really key thing,
Yeah.
because it's managing then the expectation right from the start. And I think that's a lot of where the stress comes from, because I think there's a perception within the public generally that it isn't going to take very long, that it is a simple and straightforward process, and actually things should just fall into place. But we all know that in the world we live in these days, that legislation and red tape and all of the things that we're
Yeah.
bogged down by gets in the way. So I think that's the first thing that I think they do exceptionally well, and they put a little roadmap together to say, look, this is what it's going to look like, and actually here are the key milestones that we need to progress to. And it actually gets the buyer and the seller, for that matter, on board with what they need to be doing. So if there are documents that need to be completed and filled in, if they are needing to be paying for searches, if they are having to get, various things in place in terms of certificates and guarantees and things, it's all starting to come together at a very early stage to speed that process up. The other great thing is that they will progress the deal and they will speak to everybody on a weekly basis. And that is something that we were acutely aware of, that with the time and the cases that we were handling was just impossible to do, in our offices. So that's been the real key for us, is making sure that our service level agreement that we have effectively with our buyer and our seller was being consistently delivered.
It's quite interesting what you say there, because I think that management of expectations empowers the people in the transaction from the get-go. Because if you can give them a roadmap, and most agents don't provide the buyers or sellers with a roadmap of well, these are the key milestones we need to get to. This is what you're going to need to do on your side of things to get to keep things
Yeah.
moving. And I think that that can either, that lack of visibility in those regions can either, as you say, lead to an oversimplification of the process, i.e. they assume it's going to be easier than it will be, or they feel that it may be way too complex. And so I think we need to bring it back to that middle ground, as you say, where you can really sort of rationally bring down the temperature in the room a little bit, keep the friction to a minimum, and everybody knows what they're meant to be doing. And you talk there about consistency, which I think is what we're all looking for, sort of running a state agency at scale as well, is, how do you keep that quality control right across the brand and make sure that everybody's getting the same sort of experience? And I think previously we have been perhaps guilty of assuming that sales progression was our particular, almost like our special sauce that we would never reveal the recipe for in-house. So it does take it's a bit of a leap of faith, isn't it, Lee, when you hand that over, because it's your reputation as well, I suppose, to a third party. So you must, I take it, be very pleased with the outcome to speak about it so confidently.
I think so. I think, it's a collaborative approach that Complete ASAP take as well, because I think they fully recognise that they won't know the local sort of quirks and idiosyncrasies that exist. Because, I take our area, for example, geographically, we cover Devon, North Devon, Cornwall, and into Somerset, and across that region alone, there are different ways of doing things. There are different local authorities. There are different rules and regulations. And whilst the guys are very good at progressing and dealing with most of the things and communicating, sometimes they are having to pass back some of the more difficult parts, to us as the local experts. So I think they know their, with greatest respect to them, limitations as to where they are. And if there is something which is a little bit controversial and a little bit tricky, they will revert back to the branch to say, look, how do you think we'll deal with this? Some of us, like me, been in the business for 30 years. So if there was an issue in my patch back at the time when I was in a branch, then it would be quite easy for me to pick up the phone to the relevant person to deal with that issue quite quickly, whereas the Complete ASAP guys wouldn't know that. So I think that way of being more collaborative and working as a partnership has really, really helped to solve the difficult cases, because it was a concern for us. When we first passed this over, we thought, well, hold on, you don't know our area like we know our area. You don't know our people like we know our people. So I think we had to sort of get past that. We had to allow them, the rope, as it were, to try and see where they were. But it's come back and worked very, very well. So we do get involved in some cases. Most of them, tend to go through pretty quickly without too many problems, and they're generally able to deal with most of the standard things that tend to be thrown up through the process.
And Lee, what's client feedback been like? Because ultimately they're the beneficiaries of all these efficiencies. Yes, it saves your time in branch. It's going to save a certain amount of money as well in terms of dedicated resource chasing these sales that are already in your pipeline. You can be concentrating on generating new business at the same time. So there's the obvious advantages there, but the obvious beneficiaries are the people that are selling and buying houses. What's the feedback been from the customers?
Yeah, no, it's been very good, very positive. I think, we had to be sort of careful how we sort of set it up with our clients in the first place, because obviously, they've been used to dealing with us, and all of a sudden somebody else is coming in to take over what is arguably the most important part of the transaction. So we were careful in how we manage that with our clients, and there was a lot of discussion at the point of instruction as to how we deal with those things. For sellers, and certainly when we agree the sales, look, it will be passed over and you will be hearing from such and such. And I think once we got that bit right, it was very easy then for the Complete guys to be able to come in and do their bit. So, I think it comes back to what I was saying at the top of the conversation, really. It's the consistency of them being kept updated. I think with most of these things, if people understand what's going on, even if there's a problem, then they can deal with it. Yeah. It's when they don't hear from anybody and they're not sure what's going on. And then, human nature, we all fear the worst, don't we? It adds to that sort of heightened sense of stress. So I think for most people, it's hearing from somebody on a weekly basis, even if it's just to not say a great deal, but at least they've got the reassurance that everything is progressing quite nicely, because a week to a buyer or a seller can seem an awful long time. To an estate agent, it's 5 minutes because we're all busy people. But to someone who's in the transaction and it's their life, then, hearing from people on that consistent, regular basis with meaningful feedback is the other key, has been a really important factor for us. And that's where we've had the best feedback coming back from, our clients that have been using the service.
And that keeps the momentum in the transaction going as well, I suppose, that regular
100%.
contact.
Yeah, I mean, we had it was a simple case. It was an empty property. It was a chain-free buyer. The deal went through in 17 working days, 17. Wow. Okay. I mean, amazing. Really, really good. And again, we didn't have probably any real involvement in that part at all. It was passed across, and then we were told it was exchange contracts, and everyone was happy, of course.
Fantastic. So my final question is normally quite an obvious one, because you've been enthusiastic thus far. I normally say, look, if there are other agents considering this out there, would you recommend Complete ASAP to them for sales progression?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think if we take our own example in-house, we trialled the offering with a couple of branches to start with, because we've got, the 13 different branches, and we didn't want to roll it out across the group without knowing that it worked. So I think it was very quick in our process of analysing how successful those trials had gone in those offices that we were keen to roll it out to other branches. So we've kind of almost recommended it to our other branches in-house already. So that's been working really, really well. I certainly would say to anyone that's considering it, yes, definitely give it a go. You will definitely see the benefits of it. I think the other key element is that if you're, taking up Complete ASAP's own panel solicitor offering, and they're very, very good, incidentally, we've had no issues there, then you do get the sales progression completely free. Yes. And obviously a referral fee on top as well. So when you're thinking of a return on your investment effectively here, not just the customer satisfaction and the consistency that that's delivering, but you're getting something back for it as well as a business. So there's an income stream there as well as everything else. So no, I think it's been very, very positive. Look, like with everything, it's never going to be 100% completely smooth. But the other thing that I will say very much in the favour of Complete ASAP is that their top man, Richard Megson, is properly involved. I mean, Richard will come and talk to us if there are issues. He's happy to be on the end of the telephone to deal with them. And to be fair to him, with the odd little issues we've had, Richard has come in and dealt with them personally, and we've seen a positive response as a result of that. Yeah, so no, very, very much I would suggest, if I was starting up an estate agency today, single branch, I would outsource my conveyancing, and I would certainly be looking at Complete ASAP as an option, very much so.
Fantastic, Lee. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.